Okay guys, today I'm here at the Danbury Airport. This is kind of a cool thing going on. If you hear in the background, there's an engine revving. You can see right there, the home of Glickenhaus. So, behind these walls, and right now, they just opened it. Timing is everything, I guess. 004. The reason I'm here is to chat with Jesse Glickenhaus, get a tour of the car. That car, meaning this one here, is coming to the studio before it goes up to Canada for a crash test to get the DOT certification, all those kinds of things. Timing is everything. So there you go. I wasn't expecting that. We're gonna go find Jesse right now. That's what you call an intro. So that and a whole lot more on this episode of Drive and Protect.
All right, so we're here in Danbury, not too far from you. We're building the 004S crash test car. We're getting it all ready to drive it into the wall and make sure that it's safe. All right, so the first thing, Sal Barone is over here, and we are setting up the shifting mechanism on the transmission. This is not the final transmission. A lot of things on this car are prototype because we're going to drive it into a wall after you get it all beautiful. So there's a lot of things on here that are not going to be on the final car. The wiring harness, this over time would get dry and break. We don't like that. This is just a prototype part, not final. The transmission is not final. But Sal can't take a car. You can't tell Sal we're going to build a car and it doesn't need to drive. I tried that and he said, okay, so it'll drive. I said, no, Sal, it doesn't need to drive. He's like, okay, you want to drive it?
That's Sal.
Yeah. Now Sal's going to kill me. I don't know if anyone's ever been killed live on this show, but we might see that. So you see a lot of wiring computers over here, just testing the shift mechanism. One of the reasons we're driving it is so we can drive it over to your shop in a couple of days. So here in this part, you see a lot of the crash structure, which is going to absorb a lot of the energy. I don't know if you've ever driven into a wall at 30 miles an hour. We don't recommend it, but we've done a tremendous amount of engineering from our race cars to make sure that this stays safe. All of this structure will crumple, absorbing a lot of energy. And we believe 30 miles an hour into a wall isn't even going to damage any of the chassis or the tub.
Now, you mentioned something about the
So we got two frontal crash tests, a head-on and a 30-degree offset. What you're seeing here is the front crash structure. This is our initial design. We will then have, in our newly designed front crash structure, we have sleeves here that protrude out further, and this is for just lateral rigidity.
And then what about the radiators?
So the radiators are heat exchangers. The front radiator, then two intercoolers are by PWR. That's the same supplier that supplies Formula One heat exchangers. Here we got our front corner. These are two-way adjustable front dampers. We have our uprights and our upper wishbones. These will eventually be forged elements. Our tubular lower wishbone, that's actually by a supplier, an Italian supplier that supplies Pagani as well. We have our brake booster here, our Continental vacuum pump. This is just for our crash test car. This is for race use only, so you'll be seeing something different on our production car.
Not DOT.
Oh god, our race only.
And you can see a lot of the lessons we've learned from racing that we put into our road cars. So this is something we do on all the race cars where we torque to spec and then we mark it with a paint pen. And what this enables you to do, if there's a touch on the track, if cars get bumped or after the crash test, you can visually inspect this, and if the paint has cracked, you know you have to unbolt and check the structure underneath. If the paint is fine, it means most likely the energy was absorbed outside, and the structure underneath is okay. So after we torque to spec, everything is marked.
What you also don't see up front here in these aluminum extruded beams is we've designed initiators, which will give a more controlled crush for the frontal impact.
What is this?
This is the AC condenser.
Because you need AC in a car that's going to get
AC
crashed into
condenser
a
is
wall.
under here.
And a lot of, like I said, a lot of this stuff is prototype. So these are the prototype race doors. The final road doors we will do in a separate crash, a side crash, with the window mechanism and everything. But this is the carbon fiber as it comes out of the mold for the race car. This is the raw, before it gets into Larry's shop. This is what it looks like. We'll see what it looks like afterwards. But almost everything has to be final, even though there's a lot of prototype parts. The seat belts are part of the crash. You can see these seats we custom made with Sabelt. They make some of the nicest seats in the world. We custom made these rear seats. And you can see, I might be sitting on my microphone, you can see how much space there is. So you grab this, get in here, and I could take a nap. Sometimes we do take a nap in here. For a sports car passenger seat, there's just a tremendous amount of room, and for tall drivers with the center seat too, there's a lot of headroom. There's room for a helmet. There's room for very, very tall people.
The 6 gauges that you see here, you got the boost pressure, you got oil temperature, you got oil pressure, you got battery voltage, you got coolant temp, as well as your gas.
But your sharp-eyed fans will notice turbo. It's not a turbo. That's a vestige of a crash test gauge. That will not say turbo. That'll be your supercharger boost.
When you were mentioning something about the steering wheel?
Yes, so the hub here, we actually redesigned it, and it's a collapsible hub, and this helps with the crash testing to absorb more energy.
Awesome.
You may notice there's no airbag. So this is actually the steering wheel that will be used. There's a lot of questions about that. We are fully designing to full Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards, and as a unique situation on the seating layout with a center driver and 2 rear passengers, it's not actually required to have an airbag. We tried to get airbags. We went to everybody who makes airbags, and we were told with the Takata recall, there's a point we're at the airport, it's a client flying in.
Yes.
We were told with the Takata recall, nobody would make us airbags at any price because we're selling just a handful of cars. If we scale up in volume and the recall goes away, that may change. But for the time being, we will meet or exceed all the motor vehicle safety standards with the classic steering wheel. But that's the point of this, is to absorb some energy in an unbelted crash.
Some people are probably also going to see battery down there. What's going on there?
Yep, so this is not the final battery. It's not the final placement. This is actually the placement for FIA. So it meets the FIA because we build race cars for the road. So this is actually a safe place to have it from a race car point of view, but this is not the final battery or placement.
And as you can see here, because this is our S variant, will be a gated manual 6-speed. The CS will come in a electronically actuated 7-speed Shima gearbox.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You got plenty of room.
No, ton of room. I don't know how the seat is adjusted. It may be adjusted up right now, but the steering column is electrically adjustable. The seat, forward, back, 6-way electrically adjustable.
I love this.
Yeah, you've got the
glass.
visibility here. It makes it feel really open. And in the final car, there was a parking brake here, but there'll be a foot activated parking brake. And this is interesting. So some company that I will not name didn't make it easy to unlock the door when the battery died. And so, because the doors are electrically actuated, we wanted a very easy way to get out if the battery died or if there was a crash and the battery got shut off. So here in the final car will be a manual release button in the car. And then the other thing that happened is some companies made it difficult when the battery died. When the battery died to get out of the car or to get into the car. So people would get locked out of their cars. So what we've done here, this cap mirrors the gas cap on the other side, and it has a lock with a key, mechanical key. So you're going to unlock this, open this up, and there's a secret pull tab that'll release the door. So if your battery died, you could still get into the car as an emergency.
Here's our prototype test. Looks pretty good compared to that.
Yeah, that's famous from your last video.
Yeah. This is our little test we can do. Original, after our done. So what's going on over here?
So here we got the intercoolers, we got the spall fans. This is a LT4 dry sump, so we got our oil tank over here. Our move it brakes, 6 piston up front, 4 piston in the rear. We got our 2-way adjustable Bilstein dampers.
So there's the cap. So if you get locked out, you can do that. Take the cap off, and then you can get into the car.
It's important to note a lot of components that you see on the car right now on this crash car are prototype. So our exhaust is a prototype exhaust. The intake is a prototype. Again, this is a Graziano 6-speed gearbox. We, for production cars, will be going to a Cima 6-speed that is capable of handling 900 Newton meters, and a 7-speed for our CS model, which is capable of handling 1100 Newton meters of torque. And so our hatch here, this is a plexiglass, a thermoformed plexiglass component, very similar to what you would have seen with the Ferrari F40s.
And also P45. We took some of the design elements from P45. So one thing we have to do on the rear, because when you crash a car, it needs to be the worst case scenario. So any change that's not 1000% the same as the final production car, we're documenting, and we're doing an engineering report to show that what we're crashing is a worst case scenario, so that this crash would be worse than the customer car. The customer car will be safer. So one thing we're doing with the gearbox, because the gearbox that we're using in the production car is slightly different, we're machining an end cap that will put this gearbox at the exact right location as the final gearbox, so that when we do the rear crash test, it's hitting what would be the place of the gearbox in the production car.
And then we can ensure that the cabin is not damaged due to the test.
Clearly, this is a prototype, and as soon as we crash it, we're going to start building customer cars. And we have a backlog of 50 cars that are going to our founders, our dealers in New York, Connecticut, Florida, Georgia. And the questions we get all the time: how much, how fast, what can this thing do?
So for power levels, the LT4 has 650 foot-pounds of torque, 650 horsepower. It's made it to a 6-speed Cima gearbox that's capable of handling, like I said, 900 Newton meters. And then our CS variant is going to run the LT5, 755 horsepower, 715 foot-pounds of torque. Made it to a 7-speed electronically actuated gearbox, Cima gearbox, that's capable of handling 1100 Newton meters of torque.
And what does that mean? What does that mean for when you're driving around? It means a couple things. So no BS. I'll give you the actual real weight, which most people won't do. With fluids on the ground, ready to drive, 3,100 pounds. There's a lot of people that tell you a lot of things, and there's a lot of numbers on the internet that are not real. That's the number on the corner weight on the scales. And what does that mean for how fast? With the 6-speed gearbox, it tops out 201 miles an hour. With the 7-speed gearing, 211 miles an hour. Or, as we tell people, fast enough to spend a night in jail anywhere in the world, guaranteed. The 04S, if you want manual, analog, $460,000. The paddle 7-speed CS is $598,000.
Okay, and then when are they available?
The first cars are rolling out as soon as this crashes, and orders that go in now are first come, first serve in order of deposits received. They're delivering toward the end of this year, beginning of next year. So those are our road cars, and if you're more of an off-road person, we have the Glickenhaus boot. We have the 4-door boot that will be coming out this summer and racing the Baja 1000 again. That $287,000, and you'll be seeing that. And this is our shop, and we'll get this started so we can drive it over to you. Thanks for coming.